There you go.
This is the People's Water Board Coalition Water Wednesday webcast for January 5th, 2022.
Welcome back again. Happy New Year to all of our viewers and any of our new viewers. We're back again with our first installment of the new year of the People's Water Board Coalition's Water Wednesdays webcast. And today, people, we have a guest that I am so very honored to have. Not only is she an activist extraordinaire, an esteemed author, she chairs the board of the Food and Water Watch, and she is also a founder of the Blue Planet Project and the Council of Canadians. She has helped orchestrate a caravan to bring water to Detroit. She has been a supporter of the water activist movement for several decades. And we are so honored to have you here today, Miss Maude Barlow.
Wow. Thank you, Nicole. And thank you, all of you, so much. The People's Water Board, I am just so thrilled to be here with you. You've been an inspiration to me. I've loved you guys for a long time now, and I'm just delighted to be with you today, and the best of the new year to you.
Thank you so much. And I guess
Thank you.
One of the first things that I personally would like to ask you is, could you give us a little background on the Blue Planet Project?
Blue Planet Project is it's situated here in Canada, but we have international members and a board, and we fight water privatization, water commodification. Since I discovered many years ago, back in the 1980s, that water was considered a tradable good in trade agreements like the North American Free Trade Agreement and the World Trade Organization, I thought, oh my goodness, how can this be that water, which we need for life and which the planet is running out of in terms of accessible clean water, how can it be a tradable good, a good like running shoes or oil and gas? And that set me on a journey which led me to understand that, yes, we're a planet running out of clean, accessible water. We must address this, and we must address it to an extent separately from the climate crisis. But there are a lot of private interests, big corporations that figured out long before we figured it out that whoever controls water in a planet where the demand is going straight up and the supply is going straight down was going to be powerful. So we set up an organization, and we work with many others around the world to stop different kinds of privatization. There's privatization of water services, so that's municipal services. Particularly that you'll see that in the global south, where the World Bank says to a country, well, we'll give you money for water services, but it'll be a private for-profit corporation that'll make money from it. But we also have what's called water trading, where water is separated from the land and then sold for profit. They do that in Australia, in Chile, in the west of the United States, in your own country. We now have, most recently, you probably read that they're opening up speculation on water futures in California, which is basically where if you're wealthy enough, you're a big hedge fund or a big ag business, you can buy up. You're not buying the actual water, you're buying the block, the index, the water index, and you just hold on to it because you know the drought's going to get worse and you know the price is going to go up and you can make money on it. And these people have the nerve to say they're doing it in the name of conservation. So that's a longer answer to your question, which is that we're an organization, and Food and Water Watch as well, based in Washington, but with many offices around the country, are dedicated to the maintenance of public, democratically controlled water, that we believe that water is a public trust, water is a human right, water is a public service, and no one should be allowed to determine who has access to it on a for-profit or private basis.
I completely agree. I know that we've had that issue with this company that the name keeps floating around called Veolia. And that's one of the things that they're really striving to do, is privatize water, which would be detrimental for the vast majority of citizens in our country and in the world.
Mama Lila said to us years back, and it really at the beginning, the height of the Detroit water crisis, she was just really because we had to give out water, bottled water. It was just like, it was the only thing that we could do to get water to people because so many people were shut off. But she said the commodification of water is the most evil thing that any corporation has ever done. It's the worst thing that's ever happened to the planet. And I remember the look on her face, like, because we were ordering all of this water so we could get it to people. And it was just, the people who created the problem, they were also the only solution that we had to the problem. And it was just devastating. And I remember the look in her face of this is not good. We are not okay,
Yeah, Lila Kabil really, really got it. I mean, she was just such an amazing woman and a dear friend. When we would see each other, we just cry. We just hug each other and have a little cry just because we were going to just get that out of the way kind of thing. Yeah. But she really understood it. And she also understood the connection to plastic, of course, and the connection of plastic bottled water to the energy crisis. I mean, every minute, 1 million bottles of water are sold around the world. I mean, if you were to put the empty bottles from just 1 year of plastic bottles, those individual bottles, end to end, they would reach over halfway to the sun. Now, they're still on the planet. That stuff doesn't break down. So, we're taking pure, clean, beautiful water. We're either polluting it or moving it from where nature put it to where we want it, and then privatizing it and saying, well, if you want it, you have to buy it in plastic, or we're going to destroy it, and then you have to accept it as charity.
It's toxic water.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
In Flint, we saw that too. It was this, because it was a huge environmental emergency because there were mountains of bottled water because they couldn't do anything. They couldn't bathe with their water. So they had to use bottled water for everything. And it still to this day is an environmental emergency happening in Flint because of it, because that's all they could use. It's really terrible.
Starting to happen in other cities as well, because we're seeing the beginnings of that same crisis happening in Benton Harbor.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it's happening around the world, and it's really important. And one of the things we chatted about just before we went public here was the fact that we want people to know it's not just in the United States that this is happening all over the world. Sometimes it's rich countries or rich corporations kind of forcing it on countries of the global south, the poorer countries, but sometimes it's the municipalities themselves say, well, let's just privatize it because the private companies can always do it better. They're more efficient. Well, of course they're not. I mean, study what's happened in Great Britain. The first of these privatizations was Margaret Thatcher in the 1980s when Ronald Reagan was your president. We had a right-wing prime minister in Canada, and everybody was looking at privatizing anything they could put their hands on, right? Mm-hmm. Trains, public health care, public education, just privatize it. And she was the first, and it's been an absolute disaster. The CEOs of the water companies in Great Britain make a killing. They pay no taxes every year at tax time. There's a big story, or many big stories about why they don't pay taxes, how they hide it. They dump their effluent and their toxics into the Thames River and any river that they can find. They need to bring that water. We need to do that everywhere, bring it back. But I want to, we also talked about the fact that I really want to put a concept of hope and stories of hope out there, because I think it's really important, particularly in the middle of this pandemic, that we look to the good things. There's been a movement to take back water privatizations, municipalities where its water has been privatized and it didn't work. It never works, except for the big companies that make lots of money and their shareholders. And there are now something like 337 cities around the world that tried the privatized route for their water services, and they took their water back into public hands. And now I'm talking big cities like Paris and Berlin. Berlin, they had to have a referendum. The people they called themselves the People's Water Table. So I bet they took it after you guys, but they formed this citizens group and they just held a referendum. They got hundreds of thousands of signatures that forced their government to put, I know, it was a wonderful story. And they became what we call a blue community. And a blue community is a municipality that agrees that to protect and promote water as a human right, to protect and promote water as a public trust. That means you can't privatize it. It has to stay in the public in a run by a public agency, and that if there's clean water coming out of the tap, and I understand that's not so everywhere, but if there is, then you phase out the use of bottled water, plastic bottled water on all municipal premises. And we now have something like 25 million people around the world living in cities that have become blue communities. Los Angeles was the first in the United States. And I would love to see that movement take off, because it's a positive way of saying we're going to protect something we love. Because as you know, we're always sort of fighting against something, and it's nice to be fighting for something or putting a vision out there. And I do want to say, while we're talking about what Americans can do, and I would urge you and your listeners and readers to go to Food and Water Watch, the website, and to the water. They're promoting something called the Water Act. And I'll just give you the actual proper term. It's the Water Affordability, Transparency, Equity, and Reliability Act. And it's an act that would basically ensure proper funding for municipal water services and maintain public control forever of water services. So it's a really important concept to be supporting Food and Water Watch and other groups that are promoting that. It's called the Water Act. You can go right on their website and find out all about it.
I'm so grateful that you brought that up. We had Mary Grant on a few weeks ago, and
Yes.
she explained it just phenomenally. She, broke it down, how important it was. And it's nice to just kind of bring that reminder up here at the beginning of the year that that's happening and those things. And I didn't know about the blue communities. Did you call them blue communities?
Blue communities. And now we're starting a project called Blue Schools, where a school
Awesome.
pledges to become a blue school, because again, they're going to teach their children about the human right to water and sanitation. Can't forget sanitation. And they're going to, because remember when COVID broke out? When we first learned about it, they said, wash your hands with soap and warm water. Do you know that half the population of the entire planet does not have a place to wash their hands with soap and warm water? Half the population of the planet doesn't have a place to do that.
That's right.
Many clinics in the global south, health clinics, no running water. Schools, no running water. So of course the girl children won't go because they don't have any privacy for sanitation. If there's any silver lining to the COVID crisis, it is that it has shone light on the need for proper sanitation in the global south and everywhere, and that you need to have, if you're going to have a pandemic, if you're going to have any decent healthcare, you have to have proper sanitation. So it really, we've been trying to put a spotlight on that really hard. But Blue Communities it's an exciting project.
I'm going to dive right into it and learn everything I can about it. Let's do it. I'm enjoying that the right way.
How you feel, or what are your feelings on the Enbridge pipeline?
Oh, we have fought Enbridge. We've fought all sorts of pipelines from here with you guys and separately. And I'll tell you, just because we're being hopeful, we actually stopped the biggest pipeline, proposed pipeline in North America. Now, it wasn't going to come through the US. It was going from Hardisty, Alberta, where line 3 starts as well, but it was going to be north of the border and go down it was going to pass under thousands of waterways and end up being shipped in the Atlantic Ocean, if you can believe it, on big barges. And we were able to stop it. The fight around line 3 has been so powerful, and I am so moved and taken by particularly the Indigenous leadership, the leadership of the tribal peoples along the route. First of all, it promotes and continues fossil fuel use, which we're all trying to stop. And everybody agrees. Even the governments are now saying they understand that the crisis is, and look what happened in California with that fire, right? It also, what they call dewatering, when you know this, and when they put the pipeline in, they have to suck out a lot of the water. They have to pump it out because it would, it's not safe for the workers or anybody, or you can't put the pipe down without dewatering. And they displaced billions of gallons of water, billions. And they got the Enbridge got a license for a certain level, and then 10 times that they turned around and said, "Whoops, we're sorry, we have to take 10 times more water." It's just outrageous, so, and of course, if there's a spill, and we're very worried also about line 5, which is the pipeline that takes the oil that comes down from Hardisty down to Wisconsin. It's refined there, and then it goes back under the part of the Great Lakes, under the Mackinac Strait, and then to Sarnia. So if you could believe it, it goes through the US to get refined and then back to Canada. And it is dangerous. It's like almost 70 years old. It is in terrible condition. If there was a spill, it would just be just so terrible for the Great Lakes. So we need to make the link, and thank you for doing that with water and these pipelines, because sometimes it's hard to see what does climate change in this pipeline, and at the source, it's making it worse. But what's real is that pipe right there is in my backyard, or you're bringing it under, I think it's over 200, line 3 goes under 200 waterways. I mean, it spills, and we've had spills. Enbridge has had spills. It's
The
very
largest in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
absolutely. You can see the films of that with the oil running in the street. It was just appalling, and it's taken years for them to even try to get back to some semblance of health in their waterways. So kudos to the people who fought that. We don't win everyone, and that's one of the things that I've written this new book on hope, and one of the things I talk about is how we have to
really
don't always win. You don't win every fight.
Oh, geez.
I think, how are you? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Are we frozen?
All right. I think we just had a little blip there.
A little glitch. Yeah.
But we're all frozen.
Yeah. Valerie, you're frozen, but but we're still here, Nicole.
Yes.
We were talking earlier about how I got involved with the Detroit
Sorry.
movement from the beginning. And it was, I don't know, all of you would know who Charity Hicks was. I bet lots of you do.
Yes, I know extensively about her.
Well, I met Charity Hicks. I wish I could remember the year now. It was quite a while ago, at a conference at the Blue Mountain Center in upstate New York. And I fell in love with her. I mean, you couldn't not fall in love with Charity Hicks. I mean, and she sat down and told me the whole story about, inner city Detroit and how the water was being shut off. And I visited many times to Detroit, and in fact, suggested that we bring in the UN special rapporteurs, the experts on human rights, which we did. We brought in 3 experts, the one on water and sanitation, one on housing, and one on health. And they came and they did an examination, and they said, what is happening here is appalling. It is against the human right to water and sanitation, which the UN has adopted back in 2010. I was very involved with that. And it was all over the world. I mean, the fact that Michigan and Detroit were named by the United Nations Special Rapporteurs on Human Rights as violating the rights of their people was just huge. I mean, I did interviews in China and, Europe and all over the place. And we did you remember, some of you, we brought, as a gesture of support, we brought public water from Canada to Detroit. And that's one of the places where Lila and I hugged and wept for a few minutes. But it was, of course, we weren't bringing enough water for everybody, obviously, but it was a convoy of people from Canada saying, we love you, we care about you, we're bringing public water to you as a show that you have a right. We all have a right to public water. And it was just a terribly moving day. I remember it very, very clearly.
It was one of the most beautiful shows of solidarity I've ever seen in my life. And after that happened and the UN came here, it blew up. Everybody was talking about Detroit and the water crisis here. Honestly, it was the one thing that made the globe really kind of stand up and see. And just global solidarity started showing in and pouring in from everywhere. At that point in time, when that was happening, I had a water station set up in my front yard because my whole neighborhood had been shut off. And I remember bringing the water, some of the water that you all delivered back to my front yard, and delivering it to my neighbors and telling the story of the solidarity. And it did make us all feel very hopeful that we would be successful in getting everybody's water turned back on. Of course, we haven't been.
Also highlighted the issue of environmental racism. Let's be honest. I mean, I remember
Absolutely.
sitting down with Charity and Lila and many of you at a table and saying, I don't understand why this isn't a story all over the United States. It's not even a story in Detroit, really. Why not? And people said, because the inner city of Detroit is largely African American. You know, if this were a suburb, a wealthy suburb of the city, or if it were downtown New York City, it wouldn't be happening. You know, it just would not be happening. And it was such a striking example. We know that environmental racism impacts Indigenous peoples in the global South. The mining companies go into Indigenous communities where they have very little power. But when you see it in a downtown city where people are having their water turned off, no water for toilets, for washing, for their children, for their elderly people, for the sick people to cook with. When you tell people that story, they can't believe it. I tell them the story of Cochabamba, Bolivia, which a number of you will know about, where the World Bank forced them to take in a private company to deliver water. And not only did the company triple the price of water, and this is an indigenous community with no money, right? So they couldn't afford to pay it. They said, we're going to charge you for the rain that comes from the heavens. If we catch you capturing this water in buckets or pails or whatever, we will arrest you or fine you. And the people said no. That was one of the first water wars, a real true water revolution, where the people said, we're not going to take this. And I remember asking Oscar Oliveira, who was the leader of the time of that. He was a union person at a shoe factory. He'd never been outside of Cochabamba or Bolivia before. And I said, what gave you the courage to stand up to the army? Because people were killed. Like it was serious, right? And he said, because, and I'll never forget this, he said, I would rather die of a bullet than thirst. I'll always remember that.
Wow.
Wow.
That's so passionate.
Yes, it is.
That way, and understand that is the ramifications of not living with access to
Water.
affordable water, to allow people to come in. And I've never understood this, because our municipalities, particularly when you look at Detroit, we know that our government is focused on making revenue and making a profit. But therefore, if you come in and let someone privatize, the municipality is no longer making the profit. This private entity is. So why would you allow our water to be privatized and commodified?
And very often, as you know, it's a foreign-based company, and their investors are all over the world. They don't care about you. They couldn't care less about you or your water or the quality of water or whether you have access to water. Why would they care? It's called the dead hand of the market. It's, you know, it's what can make money. Just suck it out and make money. But I want to keep saying the good news is that people have fought back, and we've largely kept water public in North America. We have exceptions, and there have been lots of fights around it, but we really have understood there's something so personal about water. You know, it's like, okay, oil and gas is privatized and some company from another country is making money, a mining company, the terrible Canadian mining companies are all over the poor countries, grabbing their wealth and poisoning them. And we fight our own companies a lot. And that is all awful, but something gets different when it's about water. People understand the connection between water and life. And I think women particularly get the connection. You're talking about water.
Because when you say water is life.
Water is life. And very often women are the ones responsible for feeding the family and growing food in the garden and washing the clothes and so on. She's the one who needs to be responsible for all of this. And so people are willing to stand up and fight for their water rights. And that's what happened in Detroit. That's what happened in Flint. That's what's happening in many, many countries around the global South. But
I think it's also because we're the nurturers by nature.
Yes.
we nurture.
Yes,
If we're
yes.
talking about hope, I mean, they won their water struggle in Colombia or in
Yes,
Bolivia.
they
They won their
did.
water struggle in Bolivia. And I asked Oscar Oliveira once, you know, how he did it, how the community really got together and fought this ridiculous company that just really, they were hell bent on those people just dying in the streets. They were.
Pretty
But it
much.
was like we organized every day. We got up and figured out what we were going to do that day to be a thorn in their heel, a thorn in their side. And they really did that as a community. So that's very hopeful that we're able to. As you know, we're still fighting for a water affordability plan here, the one that we created, to be put in place because we are on a 2-year moratorium on water shutoffs because of COVID. So at the end of those water shutoffs, what is that going to look like? It's really, really scary to think that we're going to be in the same situation or far worse than we were in 2014 with water shutoffs.
Yes.
So we have literally till the end of the year to push our water affordability plan. And that's what it's going to look like for us. And we're going to have to take that suggestion of organize. It's the only way that we're going to get it done because our municipality is hell bent on us not having clean, affordable water. Hell bent.
Absolutely, definitely.
And we still have the same mayor that was there in 2014 who did not care, who was very angry that
He still does not care.
Yes.
Only did the moratorium because the governor pushed him into it.
Yeah.
And that was because of you. That was because of the collective work you guys did, and all of us working internationally and getting the word out internationally, embarrassing the government in Detroit, embarrassing the Michigan government, embarrassing the federal government. In fact, I mean, people like to think that these are problems that exist in poor countries of the global South, and I keep saying no.
It's all over.
1.5 million people get their water shut off in the US every year. So we really need to understand that this is happening in the so-called global north, the so-called first world. And it's a perfect storm of declining water stocks or clean water stocks, rising inequality, and deepening a gap between rich and poor, and rising water prices. It's a perfect storm for more problems. But I do believe that our message around the human right to water is out there.
Yes.
Teach it, are having to teach it. These are what these people say, because we have put up such a struggle. We have been so vocal, and you have been so important. I want to say that to you. I know our time is coming to an end. I want to say to you all that the work that you've done, we have held up to the world. We've told your story. You've told your story. You have become a model for communities all over the world who are fighting for water justice. And we're not going to win everything in any of our lifetimes. That's not going to happen. But we're building a movement, and we're building a trust and a faith. We're doing the right thing, and that we're and solidarity to all.
That's just a beautiful way to end.
Yes.
Word.
I knew I'd get you in tears, Valerie.
I just have one more question that I always ask all of our guests.
Yes.
And I send it out to our viewers. What can our viewers do to get involved and to help support this fight?
Well, you're better situated where you are to answer the question of exactly who they can talk to. Certainly, I'd say Food and Water Watch, and of course, the People's Water Board and the individual groups in your communities. But do some reading, do some thinking, talk to people about the difference between the climate crisis and the water crisis, because the water crisis is part of the climate crisis. But I would argue that the way we abuse water is just as great a problem in creating the climate crisis as vice versa. And caring for water, really trying to, as much as we can, make it a top of mind priority for politicians. And that's hard. I mean, let's face it, we're in the third or fourth wave of this COVID thing. And of course, politicians are either pretending it's not there, or they're trying to do something about it. But in any case, they're preoccupied, whether they say they are or not. And
Right.
we just have to keep saying this is part of it. You can't have a healthy population if you don't have clean, safe, affordable, accessible water for all.
And thank you so much.
Love you
Thank you
guys.
so much. We appreciate you
We
and the work
hope
that
to
you
have
do.
you back again, because I know there is so much more knowledge and information you have to impart upon us and our viewers. So we would love to have you back again later in the year at your convenience, of course.
That would be lovely.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Book coming out that everybody's going to want to read, and they need to read, especially people who have been organizing and who are activists and water warriors. They're going to want to read it. So I definitely, we have you back, and we definitely are going to tell people about your upcoming book and all the goodness that is in those pages. We know it's going to be good. I'm already very excited to read it.
Thank you all.
Yes.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
sir.
All right, love. Bye-bye.
Well, just a moment. Thank you, everyone. Next week, we've got a wonderful Water Wednesday plan. Please tune in. And until next time, try to stay afloat and take care of each other. Bye.
Bye. Thank